We want to turn now to the other big story that we are tracking today, the growing uncertainty facing the economy, consumers, and workers. As the Trump administration's actions and reactions sow chaos here in Washington and on Wall Street. The Labor Department reported this morning that the U.S. added 151,000 new jobs last month, the first full month of President Trump's second term. The numbers came in just shy of expectations and largely do not account for recent government layoffs and buyouts. The president touted the numbers earlier today, even as members of his economic team acknowledged more volatility could be on the way, with the administration looking to fire more government workers and slash spending.
How concerned are you that the large-scale federal government layoffs will weaken the labor market? How concerned are you?
The large-scale fentanyl what?
The federal government layoffs will impact the labor market, will weaken the labor market.
Oh. No, I think the labor market's going to be fantastic, but it's going to have high-paying manufacturing jobs as opposed to government jobs. We had too many people in government. You can't just do that. We had many too many. This is for 40 years. You know, this isn't just now. This built up and got worse and worse, and they just hire more and more people.
Now, those comments coming after a wild week that included the president on Tuesday imposing sweeping tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico, and China. One day later, the president then announced a one-month exemption from his tariffs for U.S. automakers. And then one day after that, announcing a one-month exemption on some additional imports from Canada and Mexico before warning of new tariffs on Canada today. Here's the president being pressed in the Oval Office today by my colleague Peter Alexander about the impact of all of that uncertainty.
How much disturbance are you willing to accept in the near term as a function of that? And to set expectations, how long should Americans expect things to cost a bit more?
Well, so far, Peter, there hasn't been very much because these numbers are coming out. We're here for just a little over 4 weeks. And these are fantastic numbers. I was watching some of the reports this morning. They were surprised. There could be some disturbance, a little bit of disturbance.
The president also defended the confusion caused by his decisions during a new interview with Fox News' Maria Bartiromo.
I think CEOs want to see predictability. They say, look, I have to speak with shareholders. I've got to make plans for CapEx spending. I can't if it's 20% one day and then it's off for a month and it's 25%.
Yeah.
So can you give us a sense of whether or not we are going to get clarity for the business community?
Well, I think so. But, you know, the tariffs could go up as time goes by, and they may go up. And, you know, I don't know if it's predictability. I think
so that's not clarity.
No, I think that they say that. You know, it sounds good to say. But for years, the globalists, the big globalists, have been ripping off the United States. They've been taking money away from the United States. And all we're doing is getting some of it back.
And the uncertainty of this moment stretches well beyond America's borders. The news of the tariffs first being enacted on Tuesday prompted Canada's prime minister to issue a dire warning to his country that the U.S. was trying to weaken its economy to make it easier to annex their territory. Joining me now is NBC News White House correspondent Erin Gilchrist, NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Cheung, and NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Haake, who is live for us in Toronto. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. Erin, let me start with you. What have you learned from the president and the White House today about this back and forth over tariffs?
Well, I think the back and forth is going to continue in some ways, Kristen. We thought maybe we would get a little bit of clarity from the president today, and I think things didn't get clearer, perhaps a bit muddier. We heard the president reference today in his remarks about these tariffs that there could be potentially more tariffs on Canada in particular as it relates to lumber and dairy products. He suggested that the current policy around those items are hurting U.S. dairy farmers and that he would want to see more parity with the Canadians as it relates to those particular items. And this is, you know, I think, as you talked about, we've been going back and forth, at least for the past week, really for the last several weeks, about tariffs being on and then off and then on again and maybe reduced a little bit in some places. We saw that happen for automakers, a delay in tariffs on products that were important to them. And then again, yesterday, we learned more about the idea that products, goods and services that were under the USMCA would not experience these tariffs for about a month when we know reciprocal tariffs are supposed to go into effect around the globe. And so those things, as you noted in your lead up to that bit of the interview with Maria Bartiromo, are really things that are still creating and leading to and furthering the instability and the uncertainty about how things are going to settle. We heard the Canadian Prime Minister, Kristen, say that he expects that the trade war is going to continue for the foreseeable future. And so that, I think, tells us something about what to expect going forward, that while there may be spaces where some of these things are pulled back, at least temporarily, the expectation is, at least for the Canadians, that they're going to continue to see some degree of back and forth for some time to come.
I think you're absolutely right, particularly with the president signaling that in October he could impose reciprocal, or in April, rather, the president could impose reciprocal tariffs. The market on track for its worst week since September. How is the president reacting to this slide? Is he, are administration officials getting jittery at all?
Well, no. To be blunt about it, the president said that he's not watching the stock market as he's making these decisions, these economic decisions that he wants to be making, that he has been making over the last several days. We know that the other members of his administration who've been out doing interviews and talking about the current situation have indicated that their concerns, they don't seem to be particularly concerned about the movement that we've been seeing in the stock market today. They feel as though the economic policies and ideas that President Trump is putting forward, they take sort of the long view on these things, and their belief is that in the long term, things will be better. They express that they understand there's some discomfort that people are anticipating in the short term, and that there may be an increase in prices on certain goods and services in the short term. Their belief, though, is that in the long term, it will benefit the American economy and lead to greater wealth for folks in this country. And I think, Brian can maybe get into it a little bit more, but there are businesses, large businesses in this country that are fearful about the idea that prices go up, people are less likely to spend money, and that's going to hurt businesses as well, Kristen.
You're absolutely right. And the CEO's warning they will have to increase prices. Aaron Gilchrist outside of the White House for us. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Aaron. Brian, let me with that go to you. I think the word of the week is uncertainty, right? What did all of this uncertainty mean for Wall Street, for Main Street, and what are you watching moving forward?
Yeah, well, I think, it's unequivocally a fact that we are more uncertain here on this Friday than we were going into this week on Monday. And that's because on Monday, when the tariffs weren't in effect, by the way, we were worrying about what the impact of these 25% tariffs would be. We got the tariffs, and then we got a pare back in those tariffs for one sector. And then it was kind of broadened out to other sectors as well. Again, those that are compliant under the USMCA, which the Trump administration negotiated in the first term. But if you're a business, you're going, OK, well, even if I am exempt right now, you only get 4 weeks of that exemption. So we're just going to have this conversation all over again the first week of April. If you're a business that's trying to plan around that, you have no more certainty now than you did in the beginning of this week, Kristen.
And of course, we see the board behind you. Jobs, jobs, jobs. We got the jobs report. It was lower than expectations. What did we learn, and what are the potential implications of that, Brian?
Yeah, and a few caveats to these numbers. It is the first report that reflects anything that we've seen from the Trump administration because of the survey period. It was the middle of February. The report prior to that covered the period prior to inauguration. But there wasn't really anything from this that tells us about the substantial impact of either the tariffs or necessarily the DOGE cuts. I'll explain that in a second. But first, the unemployment rate at 4.1% for the month of February. That's basically around the same as what it was in the final months of the Biden administration. So not too much to be read from that front. But as you mentioned, that headline number, 151,000 jobs added in the month of February. That was below the 170,000 that economists had been expecting for that month. But if you kind of look at the average over the 12 months prior, that's kind of in line with that pace that we had seen anyway. So it's basically in line with, again, what we've been seeing. Now, of course, when we talk about the changes by industry, what is interesting, and I'll get to the federal government bit in a second, I imagine we'll want to talk about that. Healthcare was the major driver of job gains, Kristen, adding over 50,000. Manufacturing marginally higher as well, but leisure and hospitality, this was driving a lot of the post-pandemic recovery, actually contracting. That's the third month in a row that's been the case for that industry.
That, and you look at that federal government number as well. Obviously, that's a big one. Talk about how the DOGE layoffs, which, again, were not factored into this report, what that could mean about next month's job report and the one after that.
Yeah, and it likely wasn't part of this because the DOGE cuts were really ramping up in the latter parts, the middle of February, which was probably after the survey period when these numbers were gathered. But nonetheless, we did see 10,000 in terms of a contraction in federal government employment. Again, maybe not too much to be read of that with regards to DOGE. But as we look towards the next month, again, maybe that next March jobs report, which we'll get in about 4 weeks, will reflect that. Again, what the White House has said, is that 75,000 federal workers accepted that fork in the road offer. As a fraction of the amount of federal employees that are out there, though, I just want to baseline here. There are 3 million federal employees. So this is just a fraction of that, really just kind of small beans there. But then lastly, as a portion of the overall U.S. workforce, federal employees only make up 1.5%. So we're talking about a fraction of a much larger number. Important context as we think about those DOGE cuts in the next jobs report.
Brian Cheung, you have been with us throughout the week. Tells you just how much news there has been on the economy. Thank you so much. Appreciate it very much. Garrett, I want to turn to you. You spoke to Ontario Premier Doug Ford about these tariffs. He was very upset about them when we spoke to him on Monday. The prospects of the tariffs, what did he tell you today?
Well, Kristen, he's still fired up today. Doug Ford thinks that this is essentially Donald Trump trying to destroy the Canadian economy. And he feels like it's a 5-alarm fire that needs a response from Canada. And they're kind of getting it across the country. There's a federal government response here. There's a provincial government response. And there's a response of everyday Canadians who we've been talking to all day, who are really having a rally around the flag kind of moment. The patriotism is up. The Buy Canadian movement is at the front of people's minds. And Ford is digging in and expecting this to go on for quite some time.
What do you know, Garrett, about President Trump's interactions with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau? We know that they've had some pretty heated phone calls.
Yeah, that's right. And Ford told me he spoke to Trudeau immediately after that phone call, and that Trudeau described the language as colorful. Kristen, we both know this is a president who favors 4-letter words from time to time. I think it's a pretty fair assumption some were deployed here in a relationship between Trump and Trudeau that has really fallen apart in this second Trump term. It wasn't great in the first. It's quite terrible now, but Trudeau's only going to be in office for a few more days. And I think it's the hope of certainly Premier Ford and some of the Canadians that we talked to today that whoever the next prime minister is here in Canada, and it's still a bit of an open question after Trudeau's party has recovered as he's been on the way out the door, what party that, this next PM will be in, that whoever it is will be able to forge a new personal relationship with Donald Trump. As we've talked about so many times, Trump views all diplomacy as personal, one-on-one between him and foreign leaders. Almost any different Canadian leader will get some degree of a fresh start with Trump, and that might be important to improving the brewing trade war that's happening here.
Yeah, it's a really great point. Let's talk about another point of tension between President Trump and Prime Minister Trudeau, which is this talk of making Canada a 51st state. He, of course, floated this to the Prime Minister when they were having dinner at Mar-a-Lago. Everyone kind of brushed it off, but it's been clear in the weeks and months since that President Trump seems to be somewhat serious about it. What are Canadians, what are the folks telling you about whether or not they're taking this seriously?
Yeah, the Canadians I talked to say to them this started as a joke and something that they could kind of laugh off. Then it became a conspiracy. There's no way he's really serious about it, but what if he were? Now it's something that I think has created a bit of nationalist sentiment here in Canada. Folks are furious. They're really dug in on this idea that they're nobody's 51st states. They are Canadian. There's a new ad on social media that's gone a bit viral here that's a callback to an old Molson beer ad from like 20 years ago, but it has this Canadian, I will do this justice in describing it, but I'll post it on X for people who are curious. This guy basically standing up for Canadian patriotism, listing all the things that make Canada Canada and arguing that it's not just some imaginary line drawn between two countries. It's a real line, a real border, a real cultural difference, and they're not going to be anybody's 51st state. They're going to stay Canadian. That's been a universal sentiment from everyone I've talked to on the ground here in Toronto.
Well, we will look to your X account for that. Garrett Haake, thank you. Great reporting, great interview. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much for bringing it to us. Joining me now is Betsey Stevenson, who served on President Obama's Council of Economic Advisors and was chief economist at the Labor Department. She's now a professor of economics at the University of Michigan's Ford School of Public Policy. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Great to talk with you today.
Michigan is obviously one of the states that is most impacted by these tariffs. What has the reaction been there in your home state?
Oh, I think there's a lot of fear and concern because we have an auto industry that is just, an enormous part of the state economy. And it's one that has developed over many decades to go seamlessly across the border. There may be those cultural differences with Canada, but economically, Michigan is very integrated with Canada, with, cars and auto parts crossing back and forth multiple times. We can't do that if there's a 25% tariff. And certainly a month is not enough time to, completely rebuild the auto industry. And so, we expect layoffs if these tariffs eventually go through. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who are waking up every morning wondering if today's the day that they're going to get laid off.
I guess to that point, what is the bigger concern, the tariffs themselves or the uncertainty that's creating, as you're mapping out here, its own ripple effect?
I love that question because, uncertainty is terrible, but certainty that we have huge tariffs is also terrible. So I certainly prefer the uncertainty of this week where the tariffs came on and then they went away again. And if they come on again, I hope they go away again. That's my preference would be a stable environment with low tariffs. But it's not clear to me that we solve the problem if we just get to the high tariffs and we're there. Now, somebody might argue and say, no, Betsey, you're wrong, because the problem is all this uncertainty means that the businesses aren't doing the investing in the United States. Trump wants to do this in order to encourage manufacturing investment, but we can only really make those investments if we know for sure that these tariffs are going to last a very, very long time. But the reality is, Trump can't guarantee how long these tariffs are going to last. Even if he puts them on next week, we don't know that they're going to last more than a month or more than a year. And that is going to make it hard for him to see the kind of investment that he wants. Because what he essentially wants is for companies to say, boy, this 25% difference in prices is so big that we can take a loss by building, plants and factories that are very expensive for us to run in the U.S. And I just don't know how much investment he'll actually get out of that, because, at the end of the day, that means charging consumers higher prices, and consumers might just choose to buy less. Because if the prices you're facing at the store are up 25%, you're probably going to buy less.
Yeah. Well, and of course, the big promise the president has made is that he's going to lower prices. I wonder how long people will give him to actually do that. I want to get your reaction to something that the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, said about the economy, the economic outlook, just this morning. Take a listen.
Could we be seeing that this economy that we inherited starting to roll a bit? Sure. And look, there's going to be a natural adjustment as we move away from public spending to private spending. The market and the economy have just become hooked. We've become addicted to this government spending, and there's going to be a detox period.
What's your reaction? Do you agree with that assessment by the Treasury Secretary?
I think that the Treasury Secretary is doing what he needs to do to start covering the tracks of the uncertainty and chaos that Trump is sowing in the economy. You also heard them claim today that there was a lot of private sector job growth, and under President Biden it had been all government employees. That's simply not true. Under President Biden, we added around 10 million private sector jobs, and very, very few federal government jobs. So, we had an economy that was strong in the private sector. I hope it continues to be strong in the private sector. But for example, in the years coming out of the pandemic, we had the fastest rate of new business formation that we had seen this century in the United States. So to try to declare that we were hooked on government spending when we're in a period of the fastest rate of new business formation we'd seen this century, there's something that just isn't matching up there. And I think what they're trying to do is get their story straight for the inevitable slowdown that you see as everybody, pulls back, waiting for the uncertainty to resolve.
Betsey, Stevenson, thank you so much for your insights. This should be an ongoing conversation because, as you say, there are more twists and turns undoubtedly to come. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.